We continue our summer series on the Apostles' Creed. The Apostles' Creed is a statement of faith from the early Christian church, dates back to the 3rd century. As we go through it, we are not trying to replicate the faith of the earliest Christians. Instead, we're trying to explore what we believe today. We are in the section of the Apostles' Creed about Jesus Christ, and today we have reached the point where it says, "He descended into hell. On the 3rd day he rose again from the dead." He descended into hell. Jesus suffered, he was crucified, he was dead, and he was buried. We get all that, but what does this phrase mean? He descended into hell. Well, we know that the Apostles' Creed is not saying that Jesus wound up in the little town of Hell, Michigan. Yeah, my wife didn't think that was funny either. Someday I'll listen. You can't find hell on a map. Hell is the place of the dead. Hell is the place of judgment and punishment. What is the significance of the Apostles' Creed stating that Jesus descended into hell? There's some biblical precedent for this concept, but the references are rather cryptic. 1 Peter mentions that the gospel is preached to the dead, and Psalm 139 very poetically says, "If I go to heaven, you are there. If I make my bed in Sheol, you are there." Sheol is the Hebrew word for hell. There are some other biblical references, but the phrase, "he descended into hell," does not occur in the scriptures. Nonetheless, this phrase makes an important point. This is a painting from the Eastern Orthodox tradition. Those in Eastern Europe, Western Asia. There was a split in the Roman Church around the year 1000 into East and West, and both traditions grew from that point. This is from the Eastern Orthodox tradition, and it is somewhat different. But what's unique about this painting is here's Christ, and here are the doors of hell broken open. And there are people here. And these elderly people here and here are Adam and Eve. So this is Christ, the risen Christ, reaching and grasping Adam and Eve and opening the doors of hell. The point is that Christ has the capacity to reach into the very depths and lift us up. And the reason that's important is because we've all been to hell. Hell is more than a place, it's a condition, it's a state of being. This is a self-portrait of Vincent van Gogh. And notice the look on his face. He is tormented. He is troubled. And notice these swirls of blue. This is a reflection of what's going on inside of him. He had a troubled soul and did not find peace or rest in this life. And that's what hell is. It's not just being dismissed in some kind of eternal punishment, but an experience here and now when your soul is despondent, when you feel lost and that there's no help coming and no hope forthcoming, when you feel totally and utterly alone, when God is more conspicuous by God's absence than God's presence. Jesus descended into hell. In our darkest moods and depression, that means that Jesus can come and find us and save us. This means that there is no place, whether in death or despondency or sickness, where God in Christ cannot reach us. This means that there is no place that we can imagine that the love of God in Jesus Christ cannot come and lift us up. He descended into hell because we've been there. On the third day, he rose again from the dead. Here is the pivotal event. Here is the center of Christian faith. He was dead, he was gone, but he was raised from the dead. And the Apostle Paul says that believing in Jesus' resurrection is indispensable when it comes to Christian faith. If Christ has not been raised, writes Paul to the Corinthians and to us, then our proclamation has been in vain, and your faith has been in vain. There were those in this Corinthian church who were saying that Christ didn't bodily raise, that it was spiritual, or the rise of faith among us, or a new wisdom. And Paul was writing saying, no, it's more than that. It's the resurrection from the dead. He was gone, he was buried, and now he is alive. The meaning of the resurrection of Jesus, according to Paul, has to do with the meaning of the word God itself. No word is more unclear in our culture than this one. No word has less of a common denominator among us and among everyone else than this one. This is a generic word. It refers to an unspecified divine being, or something like a divine being, supreme being, or something that holds your trust and your loyalty. Think of all the things that people like us believe in. We believe in the market. We believe in democracy. We believe in our country. We may believe in a political party. We believe in a perspective. We believe CNN is right. We believe Fox News is right. These are all statements of loyalty and trust. No wonder that this word is undefined and unclear, because we have so many things that we believe in and that we trust in. The early Christians lived in a world just like ours. There were many options to believe in. There were Roman gods, there were Greek gods, there were emperors, there were systems of government, all demanding their loyalty and trust. But they came to believe in a definitive understanding of God. God for them was very specific. The one who raised Jesus from the dead. That's how they knew who God was. And they bet their lives on it. They staked their lives on this one single belief. God is the one who raised Jesus from the dead. They never spoke of Jesus raising himself. They never spoke of Jesus having any agency in his resurrection. It happened to him. God made it happen. This is who God is. God for them became a very specific reality. The one whom they knew through Jesus. God was the one whom Jesus called Abba. God was the one to whom Jesus prayed. God was the one Jesus taught about, told stories about. God was the one to whom Jesus looked to on the cross. God was the one who created everything by saying, "Let there be light," and God was the one who raised Jesus from the dead by saying, "Let there be life." It all came down to what they believed about Jesus and the resurrection. And what they believed in Jesus and the resurrection changed them. Once they believed they knew who God really was, they had hope. Once they believed whom God had raised Jesus from the dead, then they knew that God had a future for them. Once they believed that God raised Jesus from the dead, they knew that God was remaking and reordering and doing new things, and that they were invited to participate in them. Once they believed that God was the one who raised Jesus from the dead, that's where they placed their loyalty. That's where they placed their trust. He descended into hell. The third day he rose again from the dead. In these phrases, the Apostles' Creed invites us to enlarge our understanding of who Jesus was. Jesus wasn't just a teacher. He wasn't just a prophet. He wasn't just an activist. He wasn't just an advocate. He wasn't just a community organizer. He was the one that transcends all human limits, including death itself. And nothing makes more difference in our lives than that belief. Nothing makes more difference in our lives than knowing that God isn't just a generic, but knowing that God is the one who raised Jesus from the dead. Nothing makes more difference than knowing this one. Our anthem today is a spiritual. Spirituals are born out of the slave tradition. They articulate the slave experience, and often they also have an expression of hope. And the hope isn't a general expression. It isn't, we hope things work out, or, we hope things get better. The hope is always placed not in their own state of being, but always in God. And it's the God of Jesus Christ. How did they know? Slaves didn't come here with an understanding of Christian faith. How did they know? How did they know? How did they come to believe in Jesus Christ? They went to church. They couldn't sit where you sit. They had to sit separate. They weren't welcomed. They weren't invited to the coffee hour. They weren't ordained and installed. But they heard the message. They heard this one truth. They believed that God was the one who raised Jesus from the dead. And even though they were experiencing hell on earth, they had hope. They knew that because he descended into hell, he would reach and grab a hold of each of their wrists and lift them up.